Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Leggett International Real Estate webinar brought to you by Lumen. My name is Andy Davies. I'm your host for this 1 hour where we try and help you find your dream property in France. We have a number of questions from a whole host of people, so we will try and get through as many as we can. If you do want to ask a question, there is a chat section on your webinar where you can ask a question, and Steve, who is hosting it for us, will try and pass those through to me, and if I have any chance to ask them, I will do. We have, as always, a fine selection of panelists. These are the Premier League of panelists, none of your League Two or League One here. These are quality panelists who will hopefully help you find your dream property here in France. What I'm going to do first is introduce each panelist and ask them to say what they do and who they are, and then we'll get straight into the questions. We'll start, as we always do, we'll start with Joanna Leggett, please.
Hi everyone, you have to excuse my croaky voice, which I'm losing at the moment. So I'm Joanna Leggett, I'm part of the Leggett family. We've been in France, running the agency now since 1998. We cover all areas of France, so hopefully we'll be able to help you find your dream property in whichever area that might be. All of us live and work in France, and at some stage we may have been, as you are now, hoping to move over. So do contact us, do look at our website, and we hope I can answer any questions for you tonight as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Joanna. Person who's here with us, but she isn't on picture, is Paulette Booth.
Hi, I'm not shy. My webcam's just decided not to work for the moment. Hopefully I'll pop up later. So my name is Paulette Booth. I'm the manager of Agence AXA International. And the agency is, we're a dedicated English-speaking agency, staffed by all native English speakers, bilingual. So basically we found it's not just about the language, it's about the culture, it's about understanding what you're expecting from insurance and banking, and kind of knowing where you're coming from and trying to explain things as much as we can and giving you a summary of your main insurances in English. So just to give you that little helping hand into insurance and banking.
And a new man to the team who's just come off the bench. His name is Robert Kent. Hi, Robert.
Hello there. My name's Robert Kent. Yes, Managing Director of Kentingtons. We help people plan their move to France. So we deal with their tax questions, deal with succession law, inheritance, all those problems that need dealing with if you're thinking of moving to France. And that's basically it. Keep it short.
Okay. Tracy Leonetti, a regular with us.
Hi everybody, yes, Tracy Leonetti. I am the founder of LBS, a relocation specialist in France, and I'm celebrating 30 years this year in France, so I've been here a long time. And the aim at LBS is really to try and make a smooth transition for our clients who are moving, living, or have a business in France. And we do that by helping you with your paperwork. So be that visas, immigration, healthcare, driving license, car registrations, or business creation, we're here to help you with every step of the journey. There you go.
And our striker, our number 9, Charles Cramaille.
Bonsoir tout le monde. My name is Charles Cramaille. I'm the Managing Director of Leggett Property Management. We have property managers all across France. So if you want to know if we have a property manager near you or near your house or your holiday home or where you plan to buy a holiday home, get in touch with us. We offer a full range of property management services. We also do a complete rental management, like holiday rental management service. We can help you with pretty much everything, and if we cannot, we'll find someone to. Hopefully I can answer all your questions tonight. If not, you can get in touch on our website directly. It's leggett.pm as propertymanagement.fr. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. And finally, our organizer, Steve, who besides organising this has also got his cab headset on if anyone wants to order a cab.
Thank you very much. Evening all. Yeah, my name is Steve Eakins. I'm one of the directors here at Lumon, and we are the French property currency specialists. So we've been helping people move money internationally to achieve your dream of French property ownership for over 20 years. To give you some element of scale, last year in a pandemic year when no one could travel, we moved in excess of 3.5 billion euros for our clients around the world. So we do this a lot. And we have in-country banking, provide all the relevant paperwork associated with this. So we're a tech-enabled personal service to help you with managing that currency transfers for the purchase, the ongoing management, and any other requirement you might need. Tonight, as Andy's mentioned, I'm also the tech lead for it. You'll get all our contact details and things following this session on a following up email, but equally you can submit questions through the chat function here. But before we go into the questions, we like to just do a quick poll, if we may, for the audience this evening, just so we can get an understanding of your circumstance and situation, so we can make the next hour as useful and hopefully as valuable for you all as possible. So I'm going to launch the first one now, and I'd ask you all to contribute if you can for a moment. And this is to get an understanding of what the time plans are that you're going to be starting to look for this dream property over in France. So if you have a moment to fill that out for me, that would be appreciated. And we're already getting lots of people filling that out. Thank you very much. And a huge amount of you are going to be looking within the next 3 months. So it looks like there's going to be lots of Easter and summer trips for everybody. Thank you very much. I'm just going to launch one further one as well, if I may, please. And this question is with regards to finances. So indeed, when you do go out on that trip and you do find that dream property of yours, is to get an understanding with regards to the time period with which you're going to be able to move forward and put an offer on that property. So again, if I can just take a moment to give the audience time to select the right button. Again, this allows us, because you'll be all at a different stage of achieving that dream, for us to make sure this next hour is filled with as much content, as much value for you all to achieve that dream as quickly as you can. At the moment, we've got 85% of you have already filled out. Thank you very much. With 25% of you looking right now, 30% within the next 3 months, 25 by autumn, and 20% of you for next year. Thank you very much. Right, I'll now pass you back over to our wonderful host, Andy, who's not ordering cabs, to do all your questions.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, as we've seen that within the next 3 months, people want to buy their dream home in France. So, Joanna, I'm going to ask you first. It's a big country, France. A lot of people are looking to buy a holiday home. Where is the best place to buy a holiday home in France? I know it's a bit of a tall order to answer that, but we'll see how we get on.
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, we've got sort of 700 agents. If you ask any one of those, they'll all tell you the best places where they live, obviously. So if France is the biggest country in Western Europe, so it covers, you know, absolutely miles and miles, and it changes depending on where you are. So it really depends. You've got to look at certain things. How, you know, your travel distance, if it's a holiday home going back and forward from the UK, the budget, obviously, because there's certain areas that are very, very cheap. For example, one of the cheapest areas would be in the Cruz, the sort of Centre and Limousin areas, where you could pick up a 3-bedroom home for as little as 60,000 euros. Whereas if you go down into the Côte d'Azur, you'd be looking more like 400,000 euros. So it really depends where you are. There are all of France is beautiful. You know, when you drive through the different countryside, the rural countryside, or even through the cities, because it's so big, there's so much space and there's so much character. So there's lovely properties in all areas. It really depends on what your needs are and what your budget is. Some areas are very, very warm. The southwest of France can be as hot as the Côte d'Azur and sometimes even hotter. So if you didn't want the heat, you might want to be slightly milder and come into areas like Burgundy, you know, going across into the centre of France. But, you know, do your research. That's the most important thing. See what the area has to offer. You know, if you're into golf, has it got golf courses? Don't be too far from a city, because obviously you might need doctors, hospitals and things like that. And some parts of France are very, very rural. So I would look at that as well as in location. But you can't really go wrong. And as I said, all of our agents will tell you that where they live is the best place.
Thank you, Joanna. There's a question here for Robert from Paul Habib. He asks, if a property is used to generate rental income, what are the requirements to declare income? What are the tax implications?
Is this as a UK resident or a French resident?
As a UK resident. I mean, I've also got the same question from Yvonne Miller. She thinks that you pay the tax in the UK, but also wants to know, do you then also pay a percentage to the French government?
Yeah, you pay tax in France. You pay the tax where the property is situated. We come across a lot of people that just declare it in the UK, and they think that's okay. And then, of course, the tax office catches up with them and says, no, you have to pay it here. Your property is situated here, and therefore we want to tax it.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, Jay Hen, and we've had this from a number of people, and obviously the whole ramifications for Brexit still rolls on. She says, my husband has an EU passport, mine is British. Will my time be limited per visit, or can I jump on his EU citizenship?
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, very good question, and one that comes around quite often as well. So yes, Brexit has affected the freedom of rights for British people. They no longer have freedom of movement within Europe and within the Schengen area. So if your husband has an EU passport, of course he's not affected by that. You, however, will be. So it's not because he's spending 4 months in France that you can. However, what you can do is apply for a visa attaching to an EU family member, depending what your plans are long term, whether you want to stay in France definitively or if you want to spend 6 months in France. Of course, it's different visas. So generally you have the choice of applying in France once you're in France with your EU family member at the local prefecture, or you can apply for a short visa from the country of origin, so from the UK, as an EU family member as well. It's not obligatory, but it just facilitates the process, because in France there's lots of delays with the prefectures at the moment. So generally speaking, once you've been in France for 3 months, you will be out of your 9180 rule, and therefore if you left, you would be having some problems. So it just depends on if you want to come just for 6 months or if you come in for forever, in which case the advice would be slightly different, or depending which way. But yes, you would be affected by it. Your husband, who has an EU passport, is not affected.
Just for my clarification, Tracy, and for everyone else's, because I've got this wrong, the 90-day rule means that you can go for 90 days, but then you have to return to the UK. You can't like nip across the border into another EU country and then pop back again. Is that correct?
That's correct. It used to be different. The rules for Schengen changed. Before, it used to be you'd have 90 days, then you popped out the Schengen area and it restarted the 90 days again. But in fact, that's not the case. You have 90 days, which is basically 3 months, in every 6. So either you take as that one big lump of 3 months, and then you'd have to leave for 3 months, or you would come in for a month, leave for a month, come in for a month, leave for a month. So you can spread your 3 months over 6. And
Okay.
the maximum you can stay, of course, in any 1 year is 6. So you can spread that 3 months over 6, or you can take it in one lump. But either way, after 90 days, you have to leave.
Okay, thank you. I've just seen this question come in, and as I'm trying to respond to people as they come in, I'll give this to you, Joanna. Nikki Hall says, would you advise having an English solicitor to check paperwork for house purchase in France, or can you rely on the notaire? Your mic's off.
Yeah, sorry. You can totally rely on the notaire. The notaires are completely neutral. They work usually for both the buyer and the seller. They basically work for the governments. They collect all your taxes. This generation of notaires as well, most of them will probably speak English. So if you don't speak very good French, they'll help. If not, they will get some translators in for you. I would suggest if you're not buying through an agent, it might be a good idea to use an English solicitor, because you won't be aware. But if you're using an agency such as ourselves, it's a complete hand-holding service, and we take you through everything. We translate the contracts for you so that you can understand what you're signing. We would set up a meeting with the notaire before so that you can go in and discuss how you want your inheritance to be left, etc. So you can totally rely. Most people don't, they can use English solicitors, of course, but it is generally it's quite straightforward process, and you can ask the notaires any questions that you would ask an English solicitor as well.
Okay, thanks. Charles, you're an expert in the property management field. One of the questions here from Colin Sullivan says, why use a professional property and rental management company rather than my neighbour?
Right, that's a very good question. We actually get that question quite often. So we're talking about your second biggest asset normally, second biggest investment usually. So we all agree that you want to protect that asset. So why on earth would you want to risk leaving that to the next door neighbor? That's what I would say. They could leave the door open. They do go on holiday as well to their holiday home, so they might not be around. You don't want to put your second biggest asset at risk just to save a bit of money. We are a professional property management company, such as many other property management companies around. We can do much more than your neighbor as well. We can make you earn money that your neighbor can. And we are registered, insured, experienced, and available, such as every normally professional property management company. So leave it to a professional and let us be the guardian angel of your second home.
Thank you. Paulette, we've had a number of questions regarding the access to the state healthcare and the private insurance or the mutuelle system. Can you give me a brief outline of how it works in France in terms of state versus private healthcare?
Yeah, so I mean, Tracy can probably help on this part as well for access to the state part. But certainly once you've lived in France for 3 months, you can apply for a social security number. It does then take, you know, quite a few weeks or months for that to come through. We can provide like a standalone health insurance policy, which will cover you until you can apply for your social security number. Once you've got your social security number through, then you can take what's called a mutuelle top-up. So the health system in France, it's not free at point of access like it is, say, in the UK. As a rule of thumb, if you go for any treatment, you will get 70% of that treatment back from the state, and the 30% that's left at your own charge is then covered by your mutuelle, or if you don't have a mutuelle, at your own charge. The 70% obviously isn't for everything, and there's probably more exceptions than rules. It's kind of like a doctor's visit, you'll get 70% back, standard treatment. However, if you go to a hospital and you see a specialist who there's like the government set like a scale of what a consultant would charge, or that, you know, what they should cost, but your consultant could be like a real specialist, really experienced, and they charge above that level. So where you're going to get, say if you had a mutuelle, which can be quite confusing to say it's 100% mutuelle, what that means is that will cover 100% match of the amount that you would get back from the state. So say if you're, I don't know, say if you were having treatment for, say, 100 euros, I'll use nice round figures, and so you would get 70% back from the state. But let's say, for example, you saw a specialist and they charged 200 euros. With 100% mutuelle, you would get 140 euros back. So you get 100% match of what you got back from the state, and the difference would be at your charge. But you can take different mutuelles that cover more than 100%. But that's, you know, it's our healthcare specialist, Helen, would go through all of that with you and explain and find out. You can also find, if you have an illness that's called a longue durée, say for example, a heart condition or diabetes, then you would have that covered 100% for all treatment up to the limit that the government have set. And so you don't pay for any treatment to do with that long-term illness. That kind of gives you a little bit of an introduction into it. Actually joining the health, getting a social security number, that's sort of more Tracy's department. She would help you with that.
Just to follow up though, Paulette, on that, Mick Pilling asks, are there differences in obtaining a private healthcare for a pensioner?
There are. If you've got the entitlement to use your S1, there's lots and lots of different circumstances, and basically that would be looked at if you can use, you know, your S1 moving over. It depends what your visa is asking for, so you know, it's looked on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Bit of money for you. Alice Phillips is looking to buy in the next 6 months. There's 100 grand to spend, 100,000 euros. What are the advantages and disadvantages of locking in a currency exchange rate now?
A good question, and indeed a very popular one at the moment, with the rate of exchange moving so much. For those that aren't aware, with the conflict in Ukraine, we've seen the exchange rates move by 3.5% in the last 30 days. In fact, we've actually seen it come down by 2.5% in the last week alone. So it can make a real dramatic, quick impact on people's budgets and ultimately that dream property and what that property looks like. So with regards to different ways that clients can manage that, it's really important to speak to a specialist so they can make an informed, educated decision in line with their personal risk appetite. Generally, people will do one of three things to just add some context. Some people will come along the lines of, well, I've bought the property, I've put the offer in on the property, that's been accepted. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and it cost me more. Can I buy the full amount of funds now so I can sleep easy? Others will go down the line of going, well, I'm 50-50, 70-30, 60-40. You know, if it's a couple involved, they might have a different view, so they can mirror their risk exposure with their capital exposure. And others, historically, before the exchange rates were as fluid as they are now, would simply go down the line of waiting until the notaire asks for the funds. Obviously, in that circumstance, you're at very high risk. So this particular question is around a forward contract. Those that don't know, that's in essence a buy now, pay later option if you don't have funds fully available, or indeed if you do, you can secure funds early. So when the rate of exchange peaked very recently and we got to a 69-month high, so in essence that's the best level we've seen since the evening that we decided to leave Europe with Brexit, there was a lot of people coming to us saying, can we buy our funds before we've bought our property? Which they can do using a specialist like ourselves, even prior to having a bank account where they put in the funds to. And in essence, that means that that budget is locked, that's secured, you know what you're going to be looking at, you know how much that property is going to afford or cost you as a result. So in essence, it's risk management, which really comes down to personal risk appetite. So I'd encourage people to have that conversation with the latest currency news so they can make an informed, educated decision. But certainly if people in the audience are in that marketplace at the moment, with the markets moving, it's worth engaging early to have that informed decision. Even if you reflect on that informed decision and not decide to move early, at least having that educated decision now and deciding against it for informed decisions rather than leaving it on the to-do list and it costing you more later as a consequence. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Joanna, there's a couple of people who have asked about Karen Wolf and Tony Soff. Both are looking to buy a Jeep business. Are there areas of France that have a better potential for income from a Jeep business?
You're mute, Joe.
Again, Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, again, it comes down to areas and budgets because it varies across the country. What I would definitely look out for is tourist areas because that's where people are going to want to go. You know, if they have a look at what attractions there are locally, is there fishing lakes, is there riding, is there beaches, etc. If you're looking for families to come, then you would probably need a pool. So make sure that you look for a property that has a pool. If you don't want families and you prefer couples, then you can look at smaller businesses, not necessarily having a pool because it might be for people that are doing painting or cycling or wine tasting, etc. So it really depends. Most of it will come down to budget because certain areas are going to cost a lot less than others. I would say realistically, there's only a few areas that aren't that great. Normally over towards the east, we don't see as much tourism as we do from sort of Normandy all the way down the Loire Valley, the Charentes, the Dordogne, Southwest, Languedoc-Roussillon. All of those areas are really, really good areas for tourism and for sheets. I would also look at airports. How far is the airport from the property? Because that will make a difference. If people have got to travel too far, they might not come. You might want to look at how easy it is to drive there and ferry links, etc. if people are going to be driving or bringing pets or lots of children. So look at all the options surrounding that, and then obviously look at the quality of the Jeep. You know, do some recce trips, go and look at some properties and have a look at it in the eyes of it as if you were going to be staying there as a holiday maker as such, because we do see Jeeps that come on the market you know, and they say, oh, the Jeep market is saturated and we've had no business. And then you look at how they've decorated it, you know, it's lots of old crockery and things like that. And you know why people haven't come back. Whereas some Jeep businesses, they rent to the same people year after year and clients can use it like their own holiday home because they love the place, they love the people, they love the hosting, etc. But there's no real one area that's specific for Jeep businesses. Most of France is attractive to most holiday makers, so just do your research on the areas that you like.
Charles, I can see you nodding your head there at Joe's answer. Is there anything you can add to that, but obviously with property rental?
This is exactly what I would have said. Sorry to say that, but it's just exactly what I would have said. It depends if you want to use it or if you want to let it out only. As you mentioned earlier, a Jeep business is you stay there and you host in the gîte, not like a holiday let, a regular holiday let. So it depends. If you want to stay there, choose a place that you like, and then listen to what Joanna has just said. If it's to live there and host people in a gîte, which is basically a cottage on the side of your house, second home, then, you know, listen to Joe. That's what I would have said. It's an easy answer, but it's true.
I would probably suggest that you do like people. So if you are a Basil Fawlty of the world, you're probably best not to have a Jeep business, because it probably
That's an obvious answer.
Robert, back to you on the taxation question. Patricia Bass, what are the tax implications of living partly in France and partly in the UK? Is there dual taxation, especially post-Brexit?
No, there's no dual taxation. Lots of people have asked that, what's happened post-Brexit. The double tax treaty that's existed since the 60s hasn't changed. It's a bilateral agreement between two countries. Being in the EU, not being in the EU, hasn't changed that. So from that perspective, the tax position is unchanged. So if it depends where you are most of the time. So if you spend most of your time in France, then you're going to be French resident. If you're spending most of your time in the UK, then you're going to be UK resident. So it depends where you fall within the rules. Some people say, you know, where is it best to pay tax? And I say it depends where you are. So if you choose that you do not want to pay French tax, then you need to spend less time in France than you do in the UK, and vice versa. I would say that it actually is much more attractive now to be living in France if you're trying to divide your time. And the reason for that is you don't have to worry about Schengen and all the rest of it, because obviously you already have a UK passport, so right to be in the UK, and then you have a carte de séjour, as a residency permit to be in France. So the day counting is not quite as strenuous if you have French residency. So there's certainly an advantage if you're planning to split your time 50-50 and want to spend half. It's a lot less stressful if you choose France.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, Andrew Kent, what are the add-on costs of owning a home in France, for example, the French equivalent of council tax?
So the add-on costs, you have a few taxes as non-resident. You have, of course, your taxe foncière, which is the owner's tax that everybody pays who owns a property in France. And that is actually going up quite a lot this year as well. That's been going up consistently every year. So the taxe foncière is something you need to ask, obviously, your agent. If you're working with Leggett, ask your agent as to what the previous owner was paying for the owner's tax. There is another tax as well called taxe d'habitation, which is tenant's tax, which is paid by anybody who obviously lives in the property. Both taxes are calendar year, so from January to the end of December. So, for example, if you were buying a property on, I don't know, the middle of July, then normally what would happen is there would be a pro rata payment to the owner, so that you only pay for the 6 months of that, and that is organised with the notaire. And for the taxe d'habitation, you only pay for that the following year. So again, if you moved into your property in July, it would be from the following year, January to December, that you'd be liable for the taxe habitation. The taxe d'habitation has had a lot of exoneration for residents only. So if you're non-residents, you're not part of the exoneration rules for taxe d'habitation. So they are the two main taxes that you will encounter as extra add-on taxes as a property owner. That's it really, yes.
Is it true?
Can I just add something there? Taxe d'habitation ends next year for anyone where it's their main residence, and it's been being phased out for the last few years. The French government said it would never step up taxe foncière to cover that loss, which seems to be not true. So, because we're seeing taxe foncière go up and up and up. So, as the taxe d'habitation is disappearing and they're phasing it out, we're seeing the taxe foncière go up. So
yeah, exactly. So,
yeah,
it's a different.
Sorry, I just thought I'd add the fact that it is being abolished from next year. So you might
You beat me to it, because I was going to ask the same question, because I obviously live here in France, and I thought that d'habitation was being phased out, but you're right that the foncière has crept up to basically to cover what. Charles, Keith Johnson has brought a home to rent out for holiday lets. Where is the best place to advertise to gain exposure and maximum let?
Okay, there are two choices. Either you choose a company like us to do it, and then we take care of everything. We centralize everything, and we publish and advertise on 40 now different platforms and different websites. Or you could pick the platforms that represent 95% of the online bookings. They are called OTAs, online travel agencies, and they are Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, VRBO, that publishes on Expedia as well. And then once you have that, you have also Olido and some niche websites that you can advertise on. But those are the most important ones where you want to advertise. The good side of using us, apart from the fact that you don't need to answer all the inquiries, whatever the time and the day is, within 6 or 8 hours, otherwise you lose the booking, is that we publish on all the different platforms and we centralize everything, so we never do a double booking or we never miss an inquiry.
Okay, great. Just based on that, then, just to follow on, Paulette, if Frank Thompson says he's renting his holiday home for holiday lets for a number of weeks a year, is the house insurance a lot greater rather than just living there as an individual and not letting it out?
Okay, so certainly with AXA, it depends how long you're going to be renting that property out for. If it's just occasional seasonal lets, there's a couple of ways you can insure the property. So you can either just do a normal home insurance as though it's your own home, and we can just add on a clause which is between 40 and 60 euros a year. It's not a great amount at all, just to give the public liability, so that if you have guests in your house and anything happens to them due to your property, or if you poison them with the breakfast, then you're covered. If you're going to be renting that property more sort of full on for say over 9 months of the year, then that's a completely different policy. You can use the property yourself. Say for example, you're going to be renting it out for 11 months of the year and maybe use it for a couple of weeks yourself, and then that's a different type of policy. Either way, it's not a great it's not a great expense at all to just add that public liability insurance onto your home insurance. If, say, you're living in France and it's you've got gîtes or chambre d'hôte and it's your main source of income, then there's a different policy which is a little bit more like a business policy, which again isn't massively more expensive than a normal home insurance policy, but obviously is more expensive because it's a business policy. And what that will do is that will include loss of income. So say, for example, you have a small fire, or there's a water leak at the property, or there's been a big storm and then you have to cancel a booking because your property's not habitable for guests, and then you would be covered for that loss of income. But that's kind of more, we would only advise that if the income you're getting from the property is your main source of income. Say otherwise, no, it's really, really easy to just pop that clause on the policy, not a problem at all.
Fantastic. Joanna, I've got two for you back to back. Kathy Aldis, on French selling sites, is there a way to see how long a property has been on the market, and what is the current average time houses are on the market?
Well, going back in the day, properties, particularly in rural areas or countryside areas, could take up to a year to sell, sometimes more than that, 2 years. But at the moment, the property market is really, really strong. So we're seeing properties being, coming on the market, and within a few weeks they're sold. Before, you might only just have one buyer on a property, but now we're seeing like 2 or 3 buyers putting in offers on the same property. So the market has completely changed. It's extremely strong in France at the moment. You can get very low interest mortgage rates for the French domestic market, which is obviously pushing the market itself. Property prices are still low compared to other European countries in France. So we're seeing a lot of international buyers buying up. The stocks are really low because as quickly as they're being sold now, we're not being able to replace them as quickly as we used to be able to do in the past. So it's really a seller's market as opposed to a buyer's market. I would really suggest that if you're looking at putting in an offer, do it as soon as possible because you could lose it. Make sure you've got your finances in place before going. Make sure you've got all your eggs in the basket ready to put in offers. The property prices are going up. It's changed the type of properties people are looking for since the pandemic. A lot of people haven't returned to work and they're being told that they can work from home, and that changes the whole perspective on where you live. So where they might have been cooped up in a small apartment in a city, they can now work from home, and for the same money they can have a 4-bedroom home with a swimming pool. So country properties have become really, really popular. Open space, gardens, terraces, etc. So the market is very, very strong at the moment. So if you are looking to buy, don't waste any time. Make sure you're ready to buy, in a position to buy, and put in your offer so that you don't lose it.
And following on from that, question 2, Robert Crossland has 100,000 for a holiday home with a maximum of 2 bedrooms and some small outside space. Again, sticking a very small pin into a very big map of France. Are there any areas he should consider?
Yeah, there's loads of areas where that budget will be good. You've got Brittany, which is beautiful. It's got lovely coasts, beautiful beaches, etc. It's got a microclimate in southern Brittany. Normandy, again, areas of the Charentes, you could easily find a property for 100,000 euros. Your best value for money would be in areas like the Limousin and the Creuse, where that would stretch a lot further. I wouldn't head south because you won't find anything in the south. If you look at the Languedoc, for example, the average house price is 180, so 100 isn't going to go very far. We did have a parking space for sale, which was 51,000. That was in Paris. So again, go to Paris with your 100,000. But there's loads of areas. I'd have a look on the website, do your research. You can put in that value and you'll see a lot, but there are a lot that you will be able to buy with that budget. And renovated, nice properties.
Could you have bought that parking space for 51,000 and then put a tent on it? Would that have been allowed?
You could put a van on it and put a bed in the back of the van.
And rent it out.
Yeah, Leggett property management. They're holding key holding service.
I'm going to go off my questions here because I've just seen one that's come in and I'm trying to respond to people who are actually here asking questions. Yvette Redemaker, I don't know if you're a double-barreled name, Yvette, but I can only see one half of it. And this is for you, Tracy. What are the services a relocation specialist offers? What are the services you offer?
So we are a one-stop shop, and the type of services we offer are really, from a paperwork perspective, it's anything to do with so the logistics to get across the borders, especially if you're coming from a non-European country, of course. So yeah, things like going through customs and putting together your inventory list, because that is quite a big job. And certainly if you're bringing cars across, you need to get it right. So logistics help, visas and immigration, of course, getting the right visa, making sure the application is done online, getting the appointments and putting together and consolidating the file for you so that when you go, you've got the perfect file. Validating that visa in France. Then it would be things like getting into the healthcare system, be that via the Puma, be it because you have a job or because you have a business. So there's different ways of getting into the healthcare system, and the way we would use depends on what the progress is, of course, with the visa. There's a whole consultation is done up front, first of all, on the whole project to see which way you're going to go with the file. Then we would go healthcare. Then we would, of course, look at driving license exchanges, because, of course, if you're British and you're coming to France, you'd have to exchange your driving license within that first year. The car registration, if you're bringing a car across, although I highly advise people to not bring cars across from the UK now, because it is a little bit of a minefield to get them registered via the ANTS website. Then, of course, we do things like getting their online account set up for tax, so tax foncier, tax d'habitation, helping with all the, setting up the utilities, and of course, hand-holding through those that first year of modifications of what's going on. So really, yeah, we help from A to Z with that move to make it as smooth as possible from a paperwork perspective, and ensure that they have a hand-holding service with a direct agent to help them. really. And some of our clients are obviously coming with business visas, so we help them with the set up the business as well, and even manage the business paperwork with ERSAP and things like that behind it.
Fab. Robert, Sally Carter wants to know, are there professionals in France that can assist you in completing your tax return, especially if you're running your own small business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't do it directly. We don't do actual tax administration, but we ourselves use the avocat fiscal. So we use a fiscal lawyer who does all our business work. So as in France, we're used to the word accountant. So expert comptable, if people think the translation means, oh, that's who I go and see if it's personal tax. And actually, you're going to see a fiscal lawyer would be better for individuals who want help with their tax returns. So so we tend to recommend our clients to a fiscal lawyer for the actual paperwork. Obviously, our service is the financial planning angle, which obviously they don't do. So we help people set up as to what they need to do, how to avoid the tax, how to reduce it, how to minimize it. They'll just take the numbers and say, right, we'll put these on the paper and this is your bill, and we'll deal with that paperwork for you. So, but yeah, definitely there's plenty of people who can help you.
Yeah, and that actually, just to jump in, Robert, on you, is the same thing for me. So I don't do the advice side of tax like you do, the old financial planning advice, but we do tick the boxes and put the numbers in. We do the paperwork.
Yeah, well, this is it. Well, I mean, this is it. We don't put the numbers in. That's it. We tell people how to do it. We actually have to know how to do it. It's part of my training, would you believe? But I'm not allowed to do it. So it's a bizarre one. But we have to have be fiscally trained, but we're not allowed to actually complete them on behalf of other people and charge for it. So we don't do it. But yeah, it's like. But the point is, when we do the reports for our clients, we actually show all the layouts and all the computations, so people want to know exactly what their tax bill is going to look like. So we have to computate a tax bill, and we use accountancy software to do that. But we're just not allowed to actually complete paperwork because our official status here is CGP, which is a Conseil de Gestion de Patrimoine, which is doesn't really exist in the UK, but accounts for one's worldwide assets, and it's a council position, but it is an official French formal position. So that's kind of where we fit in and what Kensington's does. But yes, so if you fill in the forms, add the numbers in, but there are very specific licenses for that. You have to have what you call a third-party license since 4 or 5 years ago. So you have to have the ability to be able to sign on behalf of the client and take full responsibility, which wasn't before that. So before the tiers provisionnels rules, anyone could complete a tax return. So, but after those rule changes, very specific people, accountants, avocat fiscal, and bizarrely, a notaire who has no fiscal training at all. I will tell you, I know nothing, but I'm allowed to do it. Welcome to France.
Sarah, what?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Charles, for you, Sarah Watson, if I use a professional property management company, how can I be kept informed about what is happening in my holiday home?
Well, first of all, that's a good question. First of all, your property manager will keep you informed. You will have regular contact with your property manager. We have all sorts of concierge packages adapted to all your needs. And we also have a mobile app, a Leggett property management mobile app that will keep you informed of everything that is happening in your house. Well, not literally everything, but all the maintenance that is happening. It's not like a camera or anything, but you will have a report every time your gardener has been in. They will take a photo, say, I've done this, I've done that. Your property manager will report when they do a checkup with photos. They go through a checklist, and the same with every service provider that might get in your house, really.
And does the property management also involve things like if guests lose keys and things like that, that can all get sorted?
Yes, of course. Every time something's happening, whether it's good news or bad news, they'll know. That's very, very important to us, to let the property owner know exactly what's happening in the house.
Okay, two more for you, Joanna, because they sort of relate to each other. Sarah Wynn wants to know, she's looking for advice on the process of buying to renovate over a few years before moving here permanently. And Richard Morris wants to know, is the cost of building materials cheaper in France than they are in the UK?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. It's roughly the same. There are certain things in France that are really expensive, and there's certain things in France that you would use that you wouldn't use in the UK, like lime plaster. A lot of the buildings are stone, not bricks, so they'd use different type of plastering techniques. The thing I'd say that I've found personally, because I've renovated a couple of houses now, is paint. Paint's really expensive, but actually I don't think you can bring it in now because of Brexit either. So I would just sort of build that into your cost, that paint might be slightly more expensive. Other than that, although the properties are very cheap, the cost of living is the same. So you have to build that into your costs. With regards to renovating a property, yeah, you can take as long as you like. The sales process is quite simple. You come over, you make an offer on a property, it's agreed with the vendor. You then have you sign the compromis de vente, which is like the exchange of contracts. That can be done quite quickly if the agent has all the paperwork in that's necessary, which is the tests for lead, the DPE, asbestos, electrics, the septic tank. The compromis de vente is then signed, and then you have a 10-day cooling off period, which if you wish to pull out, you can pull out then. If you don't pull out, you need to send your 10% deposit to the notaire. And then after 3 months, if there's a CU, which could be a change of use, for example, if it's going to be a barn and you want to renovate it into a house, you would apply for this during that time before completion. If the CU is refused, you can pull out of the sale and have your deposit refunded. If it's agreed, which normally they are on things like barns, you would be able to proceed, and then in sort of 3 or 4 months' time, you would complete. With regards to the renovation, it depends whether you're just doing internal renovations or you're putting in new openings. New openings you would need planning permission for, and that planning you'd have to check with your local authority would be valid for a certain period of time. So you'd need to look into that. But most people, I'm spending my whole life renovating, because once you finish one thing, another thing starts. But that's the love of the old, beautiful countryside properties, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a very, very simple process, and there's loads of help at hand for anybody that wants to go through planning and things like that as well.
Thank you. Tracy, a couple of visa type questions for you. We get these all the time, obviously, at the moment. John Munden is looking to rent in France on a long-term basis. When is it best to start the visa application process?
So to make the visa application process, you do have to have an address to put on the application, of course. So you've got a choice of either using the rental agreement as the proof of where you're going to be living in France, or if you're going to be, want to go before to sign all the agreements, then you can use just a hotel whilst you're signing the documents to rent. The process itself, it doesn't take long. Once your application is in, you've been to the consulate, it only takes about 2 weeks to get your visa. Well, at the moment, it's taking between 1 and 2 weeks. It's very quick at the moment. However, the difficulty is getting the appointments. So I would suggest at least starting 3 months before you want to be in France, so that you can do the application online and then check for appointments, which you might not get one the following week or the following 2 weeks. You might have to wait 6 weeks to get an appointment. So do start the process 3 months before you want to come to France. Use the address. You might not start the rental contract till 2 months later, but if you know that's where you're going to be living and that you'll have the rental contract to prove that by the time you go for your appointment, then that's okay. So yeah, 2 to 3 months before you move into France.
Okay, and there's a question that's come in on the chat here from Ivan Tabanor. Says, if you're applying for a 1-year visa to set up a business in France, does your age have anything to do with it, such as in Australia with the point system?
No, your age doesn't have anything to do with a business visa. What has to do with your business visa is the viability of the business that you're coming into France to do. So obviously, if you was 85 maybe and setting up for a business visa, that might have something to do with it. But in generally, it's not the age that counts, it's the viability of the business. So when you apply for your business visa, make sure you have a business and financial plan, 3-year financial plan, as supporting documents to be able to get the work permit. But you know, your age is not necessarily a factor they will take into account to give you the visa. Criminal record would be.
Just following on from that, Robert, I mean, I don't know whether you can answer this at all, but Alex Williamson wants to know if they're moving a business from the UK to France, sort of lock stock, are there, I presume there are tax implications in that. Is that something you can answer, or is that a...
Moving a business to France depends how you're doing it, because if you are you keeping the business in the UK? Are you running it from the UK from France? Are you moving it to France? Are you selling it and then starting again in France? There's lots of ways you could do that. There's certain things you can and can't do within the rules. You can't, for example, just live in France and keep your business in the UK, etc. So there's a lot to that question, if you know what I mean. But it depends on the dynamic of what they mean by move a business to France. If people just have a range of services they offer, and they're going to stop offering those in the UK and move to France, start offering them there, that's just creating a business in France, pure and simple.
Okay, Paulette, I'm aware that I've not asked you many questions, so there's a question here from Alan Gosling. We've mentioned about cars and bringing right-hand drive cars over. He wants to bring his beloved right-hand drive classic Cortina, and he wants to know if it's possible to get insurance, and is it more expensive on a right-hand drive car?
Okay, so when we go through a quote request or the quote system, our system doesn't ask which side of the car the wheel is on. So no, there's absolutely no difference in cost because the system doesn't know. However, if you were to have a claim and say the car was written off, as an insurance write-off, the expert would look for the value of the right-hand drive vehicle, because obviously the expert would know when they examine the vehicle, and you wouldn't get the same value as you would for a left-hand drive. You will get a value, but you will get what the value of, if somebody wants to buy a right-hand drive car in France, which obviously not many people want to unless they're moving back to the UK. So yes, whilst the insurance doesn't cost any more, there are complications if you do have a claim, if it's a full write-off. If it's just, you've been shunted from behind and there's a replacement part, that's fine. There's no difference at all. It's certainly much more difficult to insure a vehicle since Brexit, and AXA used to be able to insure cars temporarily for up to 12 months on foreign plates. We can't anymore. So what we need you to do is to put your car onto WW temporary plates. We can insure it, and then as soon as you get the French registration through, we can just change the registration document over, the registration number on the policy. But I say it's very, very difficult now. There's not many companies at all in France that will insure a vehicle while it's still on foreign plates, but it's a fairly easy process to pop it onto the temporary WW plates, and then you can insure it.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of questions here, Joanna, about the completion process of a purchase. Frank Gowles and David Froggatt. Frank Gowles wants to know, does it take 4 months to complete on the purchase of a property? And David Froggatt wants to know, how long does it take to complete on a purchase of a property?
Well, an average sale would probably take 4 months, 4 to 5 months, perhaps. It really depends. We've had sales go through in 6 weeks if we've had everything in order, and it doesn't have to go to the SAFER. The SAFER is the sort of farming association, and they can preempt on a sale. They don't usually, but anything over, I think it's 2,500 square meters of land has to go to them first. So there's all sorts of different things that could make the sale take longer. Getting documents backwards and forwards. Luckily, since the pandemic, we can do a lot of DocuSign now, which is much faster than having to send things in the post and wait for them to come back in and then resend them back out again. So things like that do speed it up. Generally speaking, I'd probably say it's average about 4 months for completion. If you're applying for a mortgage or there's suspensive clauses, like you're waiting for some planning to come back or documents like that, the sales have been taking a lot longer because people haven't been at work with COVID, etc. So, everything's been held up. But I would say, generally speaking, if everything's in order and it's a straightforward sale, you'd be looking around 3 to 4 months, probably more like 4.
And just following on for that, because obviously you're just talking about completion process, there's a question here about the DPE. When buying a property, what is the DPE, and is it a legal requirement for the seller to provide one?
Yes, it is, and we're not even allowed to advertise a property without the DPE, so we have to put that on all of our adverts when we're advertising, whether it's in a shop or online, etc. So the DPE is the energy report as such. When an offer's been put in, we have to have we have to have the DPE. We have to provide that before anything is signed. We have to have a FOSS report as well to say whether the FOSS septic tank conforms to the EU regulations. We have a lead paint report. It's not a reason to pull out from a sale, but it just highlights where the lead is, so that if you were, say, sanding shutters that had lead paint, it would show you, to wear a mask. There's an electric report, which again would highlight if there's any issues. So, depending on what's wrong, or there isn't anything wrong with the electric. And there would be a termite report to say whether the property had termites or not. Most of those reports are valid for 2 years, other than the termites. The termite has to be renewed after I think it's a 3 or 6 month period. I'm not quite sure, but it has to be done again. So if your sale went over that period of time, the termites test would have to be done again.
I think I had that on the sale of mine. I think it's 3 months. They're very up on the termites, and the guy did 4 hours basically tapping every single piece of wood in the building with termites. They're very, very thorough. Okay, I'm conscious of time. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to say thank you for everyone for joining us. I am going to ask each panel member to say thank you and goodbye, and also just if they can just if there's anything burning to say that they want to tell people, please do. Let's start. We started with Joanna first, so let's start with Joanna again.
Well, thanks everyone for coming along and listening. And I would say, this panel of experts that we've got here are fantastic. So we had so many questions coming in. If they didn't all get answered, obviously do talk to everyone afterwards. You can email any of us at any time, and we'd be really happy to help you. But thanks from me, and thanks for listening.
Charles, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your good questions as well. As Joanna said, you can get in touch with us anytime and write an email, send us an email, and then let us know if you need anything. We'd be happy to help you in the process of choosing a holiday home as well. You don't have to have a holiday home already. You can get in touch before that.
Paulette, over to you.
Okay, so just to say thank you for your questions. I'm sure there's plenty that we've had in that are still not answered, so don't hesitate at all to send an email over to us. We'd be very happy to help and explain everything. Everybody in the office has moved over. We know what it's like to relocate, and we can tell you what you don't know, if that makes sense.
Okay, over to you, Robert, the new boy.
Yeah, I feel like I've not been able to give really full answers to questions because they've been based on a premise. So anyone who feels like they have not had their answers fully answered, please do contact me, because I'll be able to fully answer them. Things like the business, etc. Please do come to me and say, yeah, I had that question, felt like I'd really like to know a bit more. Please do write to us, kensingtons.com. That's it.
And I'll just reiterate that obviously we do get loads of questions and we can't get through them all in the hour, and that is the whole point, that people can contact our experts afterwards and ask those more specific questions. We'll say goodbye to Tracy.
Yeah, great to be here once again. Just to leave you with the fact that relocation is a big thing. Finding your dream home is the wonderful part of the journey, and the challenging part of the journey is the paperwork. So don't neglect either of those. And whilst I'm there, obviously you will get my email contact, and I'm happy to answer 1 or 2 questions. If you really want to have in-depth look, you'll have to book a consultation, because I get inundated by emails every single day. So check out the website if you have to, lbsinfrance.com, and book a consultation if you really want to have a proper look at your project.
And finally, before he gets a call for a cab, let's say goodbye from Steve.
Hi everybody, sorry I've been relatively quiet. We've had loads of questions, as everyone said. We've actually had over 200 questions submitted in the session, so I apologise we haven't been able to go through to them all one by one. I've been busy trying to respond one-on-one back to people, so I hope people have found that useful. To confirm, all our contact details will follow in a following email. You'll also get the chance to attend our next webinar in a month's time, which Andy will mention in a minute, no doubt. But yeah, hopefully you found it valuable and useful. Please come to all of us. We've been doing it for a very long time. You've got faces to names now as well. Hopefully you can tell we're approachable people and not too scary. So please do reach out to us so we can help you achieve that dream of French property ownership and management.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, thank you for, everyone for joining us. We will be back. I think it's the end of April. I haven't got the exact date. That's very lax me, but at the end of April, we seem to be doing these every single month. So if you'd like to join, Steve will send details out. That you get get the webinars, you get questions that you can submit. Please submit the questions that you can. Make them as specific as you can. Obviously, the generic one saying I want to move to France is great, but it's very hard to then narrow those down. So if you can be more specific, that would be great. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in a month. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.